Looks so.
Hi, Allison. This is February 15th, 2022. And I'm Cheryl Revkin, and we're doing a Zoom interview with Allison Cohen. So I think we can just begin. Allison, it's so great to see you. I feel like we really miss you. Could you tell us a little bit about your background, your life, where you were born, your family, that kind of thing?
Sure. I was actually born in San Bernardino, California. My parents at the time lived in Lake Arrowhead. My father was a drummer, musician, and he worked in real estate. My mother was a school teacher, and at the time they lived in Lake Arrowhead. And I think this is correct, but I don't think there was a nearby hospital. So they just drove down the hill, and I was born at St. Bernardine's Hospital in October. I really like being a Libra. I'm not really big on astrology and horoscopes, but I do appreciate being a Libra because I think it really suits me. I think I'm very balanced and I try to be fair. And I think that's one reason I became a journalist, is that I like hearing both sides of every story. I grew up in Palm Springs. There's not too many people back in the day that grew up in Palm Springs. It's always was a resort town. Now it's more year round. But I grew up in Palm Springs. I graduated from Palm Springs High School in 1981. And ended up at USC, where I got a degree in broadcast journalism in 1985. And after I got my degree, I learned that I hated being on camera. So just really hated it. I think the experience taught me that I like working behind the scenes. I liked editing. I liked running a camera. I liked directing, a TV show. So ultimately, after I graduated with a degree in broadcasting, I did not do anything with my career. I ended up working in advertising. I worked for, I think, about 8 years for very large advertising agencies in Los Angeles. I worked on the McDonald's account. I worked on Domino's. But the coup de grace was when I worked on Mattel. I worked on large dolls. And I think if you know anything about advertising, I think working for Foot, Cone and Belding on the Mattel account sort of teaches you everything you need to know. I mean, it was a very, very 14, 15, 16-hour a day job. We did produce commercials for large dolls like Penny Secrets and Ginny Gymnasts. I still remember the big ones. But I learned a lot working in advertising for those large companies. It was almost as if I'd gotten an MBA, a master's in business. I mean, I learned how to strategically think about business and advertising. But ultimately, I really wanted to have a baby. I had gotten married. And I knew that there was no way that I could have a small child and work for Foot, Cone and Belding on the Mattel account. And I remember saying to my husband, what's going to happen when this baby's born and I have to go run off to Vancouver to shoot a commercial and I have to work till 11 o'clock at night. So I left the field of advertising and decided to stay home with my infant son. His name's Griffin. He is the love of my life. The other one is my second love of my life, my second son. But I decided to stay home with Griffin. It's a decision that I have never regretted. I was very fortunate that I was able to do that financially. But during the time when Griffin was an infant, I decided to go back to USC and get my degree in the proper field this time, which was print journalism, which is what I should have always have done. So I went back to USC, and it took me 5 years to go through their master's program because I had another child. So I went about it very slowly, and I loved it. It was exactly the right place for me to be. And ultimately, I graduated with a master's in print journalism in 1999.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's a little bit of my background.
Yeah. Okay, great. What's your younger son's name?
My younger son's name is Charles,
Cheryl.
but everyone knows him as Chunny.
Mhm.
He is actually named after a old family friend of my parents. My parents had a friend named Charles Lambeth, and everyone called him Chunny. And I just thought that was fascinating, and I loved it. And I loved Charles Lambeth. So when Chunny was born, we named him Charles, and he's been Chunny ever since.
Nice. Great.
So he works in film in LA.
Mm.
And my other son, Griffin, is finishing up he's getting an MBA at the Wharton School at Pennsylvania, and he graduates in May. Sadly for him, the entire experience has been on Zoom.
Yeah.
2 years at University of Pennsylvania on Zoom is kind of a bummer. But he works for Bain Consulting. He's a consultant, and they actually paid for him to get his MBA at the University of Pennsylvania. So he'll be returning to Bain. He was based out of Washington, D.C., and now he's being relocated to New York.
Yeah.
So
Can you tell us what Bain is?
Yeah, Bain is a consulting firm. There's 3 top consulting firms, international consulting firms. The first is McKinsey, the second is Bain, and the third I think is called Boston Consulting. And basically what a consulting group does is they're sort of fix-it agents. They'll go in, a corporation, a company, a government will be having a dilemma, a problem. So they'll hire consultants to come in to work with the team, make recommendations, do analyses, and then hopefully then the company will implement those recommendations. So Griffin, I'm terribly bad at math, but Griffin is terribly good at math. And when he went to be interviewed for the Bain job, he told me about it afterwards, and it was almost like having to do very intense SAT math questions in your head, on the spot. And this is something I would completely fail at. But he's a very quick thinker, and he's very analytical. He's a little bit, I hope this maybe someday will be erased, but he's a tiny bit like Sheldon on The Big Bang Theory. He's kind of that guy. But my other son is very arty and very different. So I love having, 2 sons on both ends of the spectrum, I guess.
Both sides of the brain, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So I guess you moved to Los Angeles. I think I kind of missed that. When did you move to LA from Palm Springs?
I moved to LA in 1986.
For what reason?
I took a job at J. Walter Thompson. So I had finished my degree, 85. I took a job at J. Walter Thompson in Century City in 1986. I lived in Westwood. I thought it was really fun to live in Westwood.
What kind of job was it?
It was for advertising and ad agency, J. Walter Thompson.
I see. And were you still married, I guess? Did you stay married for quite a while?
I was not married at that time, but my future husband and we lived together for a long time. We lived together for 5 years. We moved from Palm Springs together. I met him. I was working for a radio station for a short period of time, and I met him. He worked in the cable television industry. He now is a really big executive at Paramount. So he started in a really tiny way, tiny little market in Palm Springs in cable television, and now he's a big guy. But he and I moved, and then we ultimately got married about 5 years later.
And your children are with him, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, right. Okay. And then
and we're still friends, and we ultimately divorced after about 20 years, but we're still really good friends.
I see. Okay. So how did you get from the west side to the east side?
These are such fun questions. Thank you. So I really don't like freeway driving. So when we were living in Westwood, I think this is right. I would take surface streets into downtown LA, because after a while, I ended up working at another ad agency in downtown. And I drove through, I think I would drive like 6th Street. And I was like, this is the most beautiful area of town. Driving through like the Larchmont area, Hancock Park, Windsor Square. And ultimately, I say that word a lot now that I think about it, ultimately, but eventually, Dan and I did buy a house in the Larchmont neighborhood. And that I've had 3 houses in that neighborhood. And I only discovered it because I drove through it and I just thought it was so pretty.
And your kids went to school over there, I guess?
My boys went to school over there and they both graduated from Loyola High School, which I'm really proud of. I think I'm really proud that they went to Loyola. I think it was one of the best decisions I made for them as a parent. It was a really good place to get an education.
Okay. And how did you get from advertising then to journalism and print? I think you were still in advertising when you got your master's. Is that correct?
Well, I had left Cohen and I had Griffin, and I was in the process of getting my master's. So this is all going to tie together, I promise. So when I was at the Annenberg School at USC, one of those years that I was working on my master's, the dean of the Annenberg, the dean of Annenberg School, his name was Jeff Cowan. He's, a lot of people know who that person is still. He approached me and he said, we have a proposition for you. We would very much like for you to do your master's thesis on the development of a community newspaper for the university. So the University Park neighborhood surrounding USC. And I said, okay, that sounds like a plan. So I did write my master's thesis on developing a neighborhood newspaper for the University Park neighborhood. It was called the University Park Press. And I'm not going to say it. Eventually, I made my presentation. And the university was really excited about the University Park Press, but they wanted control. They wanted editorial control of the newspaper. And I just said, that won't work. That's not what this is about. This is not another sort of fluff piece about USC. This is about the neighborhood that surrounds USC. And it's a very interesting neighborhood that's heavily impacted, by the university. And at the time, there were a lot of labor issues going on and all sorts of interesting stories. And they just said, no, we want editorial control. And I remember it was a really sad day for me because I just said, no, I don't want to do that. I mean, had the university not made that choice, I probably would still be employed. I would be employed at USC, teaching at USC, and my sons would have had free education. So what I did is I took the learning from that experience, and I had written on occasionally for the Larchmont Chronicle, a small newspaper in the Hancock Park neighborhood. I was very good friends with the publisher Jane Gilman, and I reached out to Jane and she said, there's a neighborhood that I know of that needs a newspaper and it's Los Feliz. And so I said, yeah, no, I'd rather run the Larchmont paper. She's like, nope, you can't run my paper, but I think that Los Feliz could use a newspaper. So this was probably sometime in 2005, I'm guessing. So I started doing some research. I put into practice what I had learned during writing my thesis. I researched the area as a publisher would. What kind of stories could be written out of Los Feliz, Silver Lake, Atwater? Is there enough of an advertising base to support a local newspaper, et cetera, et cetera? And I just kept moving forward. I didn't look back. I had a local guy I know, I had him dummy up what the Los Feliz ledger could look like. I remember having a breakfast meeting with this person. His name's Charlie Hess. I remember having a breakfast meeting. He's like, "What do you want to call the paper?" And I'm like, "I don't know. How about Los Feliz Ledger?" And that's kind of, I actually wanted it to be called the Los Feliz Observer, and could not do that because that is already owned by the Los Feliz Improvement Association.
Oh.
But so we dummied up a dummy page of what the Los Feliz Ledger front page could look like. And somehow, I don't even remember how it happened, but I managed to talk a whole bunch of like neighborhood councils or, chambers or business improvement districts. I actually got on their agendas and, took my fake dummy around and said, "What do you think about this idea?" And everyone seemed pretty excited about it. So very quickly, I put together a program and, started the paper a couple of months later in July.
Put a business plan together, essentially? You
what?
put a business plan together?
Well, I just, I found my first advertiser. It was, I can't remember his last name. It was a Coldwell Banker advertiser. Don Snyder. Don Snyder was my very first advertiser. And he had no idea he was my first advertiser because I would never let on that I had none others. But I can remember just being so excited and, driving home. I didn't have an office in Las Vegas at the time, and just like, yay, I have my first advertiser.
Yeah.
But, really trying to figure out what the stories we would write, finding the writers, finding the columnists. The first columnist I had for the paper was, I can't think of his last name right now, but he was with the observatory.
Oh.
And he wrote a column for me for, I can't remember his name. He wrote a column for me for 16 years.
Wow.
But I knew when I had my first advertiser, I had my first columnist, I was going to be in pretty good shape. And I had such a connection to USC that I was able to find a lot of reporters to write for me that were from Annenberg, which I think was really critical to the success of the paper.
Well, I was just thinking that I know at the time there was another kind of online newsletter that I think Michael Locke wrote, Silver Lake, whatever. And there's someone, I can't remember his name now, his last name.
Kurt Rademacher's.
Kurt Rademacher, right, who was interested in doing a publication. But I feel like you put together kind of your strong values about journalism and about what's right and wrong and how you feel about a community, like wanting to report on a community, along with the business skills that you acquired from school and from your advertising career. And that probably made all the difference, because a lot of people have ideas, but they're not good business people. And I think, you clearly did not want to move ahead unless you thought it was viable, right?
Yeah, I did a really, really, really smart thing in the very beginning. And when I would talk from a business point of view, and when I would go to conferences and I would tell other journalists that I had done this, and they were like, "I can't believe that you did it," but it worked. So what I did is, if you started advertising with me, like Don Snyder did, and like Pilgrim School did, and there were probably 10, they said, "You're our first advertisers. We're going to call you founding member advertisers, and you will have 50% off advertising for the rest of your life."
Wow.
So I knew what financially I had to bring in. And as long as I could have it covered by these founding advertisers, even at half off, I knew that I was okay.
Yeah.
But it was a very attractive offer. And like Pilgrim School had had a half-page ad for like $175, for 16 years as a result. But if you canceled, the deal was off.
Mhm.
You had to stay with me from
Yeah.
here to eternity, and many of my advertisers did.
Yeah, you needed a stable base to know to have a stable income. So
Yeah.
what year did you actually start?
2005.
5, right?
So July of 2005.
Mhm.
And I remember the first day the paper was published and delivered. I didn't have an office in Los Feliz. I was still living in Hancock Park. And I remember the phone just blew up. It was like, I started getting all these phone calls. And then I spent the weekend just admiring the paper over and over again. Like, I can't believe what I just did. I just did this.
But you were
And
proud of it. You were proud of it.
I was really, really proud of it. And then after the glow of the weekend was over, I'm like, holy crap, I got to do this again. I got to get another paper out in a couple of weeks. Over the years, 16, it became very easy to do it. But I would say the first year was very challenging. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work, and it was almost like planning a wedding every month, a new wedding every month. I got to start over. But over time, it became very easy to run. I have to be honest, and there was never a day, when I was the publisher of the Ledger, that I hated going to work. I loved every single day. I found every single day different. So
yeah,
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, oh, that's great. I think it showed. Everybody really understood that you loved the paper, I think, really. And so with every publication, you wrote a little letter to your readers, right? As the editor and publisher, I guess. And was that hard to choose a subject every time you published? I mean,
I have it's a really good question. I have a couple of things to say about this. I never had time to think about what I was going to write. So I would always just sort of do it at the very last minute, the very last thing. I would be like, holy moly, what am I going to write about? So it would be, I would always go for a press check on Monday mornings, and the paper would print on Monday afternoons. So I would usually write it in between the press check and when it actually printed. It was always just something that was on my mind, something that maybe had stood out. I will be very, very honest. Towards the end of the Ledger, I stopped doing my letter from the publisher consistently because I just didn't have anything nice I wanted to say. I was pretty tired of what I saw going on in the city, and I just didn't want to complain. And I didn't want to use it as a place to complain. So I sometimes I'd start writing about something and I'm like, forget it. I'm not even going to bother.
Yeah.
But
we'll get to the end because I know it wasn't great, but yeah. Can you tell me a few highlights, I guess, early on, things that you felt really kind of influenced the community one way or the other, things you felt particularly good about?
I know, I think there's some stories that I'm very, very, very proud of, and I will tell you about those in a moment. I know it's going to sound really kind of silly, but one thing that I'm really, really proud about is that I gave a lot of high school students an opportunity to write for a print newspaper. And, I did not have that opportunity in high school. And I was really proud that I was able to do that. And in fact, when I started thinking about shutting the paper down, I felt most tugged at my heart about those students at Immaculate Heart or Hollywood Schoolhouse, that they weren't going to have that opportunity. And that made me very, very sad.
Yeah.
So I always enjoyed reading what those students had to write. I think the Ledger really hit its stride, probably some place around 2013, 2014, 2015. I think I had a lot of writers come and go. The Ledger was always a place where you don't want to stay forever. You just kind of want to get some good clips, learn some great skills, and move on to the next thing. And I've had a number of reporters, one that went straight from writing for me, I think, to the New York Times. I think he also writes for the Wall Street Journal. I had another reporter that went straight to ABC News television, and another one who's a prolific writer now for Playboy. It is the first one that I'm the most proud, because he couldn't write very well in the beginning or report very well, and I was able to teach him journalism on the spot in such a way that he was able to grab that amazing next job. So I'm very, very proud of the hundreds of reporters that I was able to work with and nurture. At the time of like 2014, 2013, 15, around that time, I had a very solid base of reporters writing for me, because they would come and go. So when you got a good set, it's really great. And I also had a wonderful managing editor, Erin Hickey, who is, she could be my best friend. She could be my daughter. I mean, I'm like, she's a member of the family to me. But it was during this time that I think that we did some of our best journalism, and not all of it was easy. I think certainly the stories that I wrote about Tom Labon regarding discretionary money that was misused, about how he destroyed documents, leaving office. This was not a good idea. And the thing that was hard for me about Tom is that Tom and I were friends, really good friends. And I never thought twice about, oh, I'm not going to cover that story. I mean, I first learned about some of the weird stuff with Tom, from a tip. And, usually when a reporter gets a tip, most of them get ignored, to be honest. It's like you got 25 people telling you to do X, Y, and Z. So somebody gave me a tip that there was some strange financial stuff going on in Tom's office, and I didn't look into it for a couple of weeks. I was like, eh. And then one day I sat down and I did start looking into it, and it took a really long time to figure it out. But it was there was some stuff that he was doing. It wasn't. I think that he had overcommitted money. I don't think he was doing anything bad with the money. I think he was just too generous. Have this money to this group, that group, that group. And I think that he realized that he was in over his head financially. So there was a series of Labon stories that
were hard.
And hard.
Yeah.
I think, the story that I wrote, that I think that really moves to the top is the murder of Joseph Gatto. And so we're like, and what happened there, and the series of stories that I wrote about the murder of Joseph Gatto, which is still unsolved. So that is the most, it was just a challenging story to write.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, Michael just told me we have a little less than 10 minutes. I can't believe it. But do you want to kind of summarize the end, I guess, in a way? I mean, clearly you love the paper. You did a fantastic job. The community was always very grateful to you. So I think people really miss you and were disappointed that it had to shut down. So.
Well, when I'm watching the clock, I see the time left.
Yeah.
So when COVID started, we immediately lost, 75 or 80% of our advertisers immediately. And of course it is totally understandable. Aaron and I at the same time were working around the clock. It was just insane. Every single day was insane. And especially in the beginning. And then I had hoped last summer to bring the advertisers back. It's kind of, because and this was before Delta, certainly before Omicron. And I said, guys, it's ready to go back. We need to get back up and running, because we had gone online only in an effort to save costs. And plus we were doing daily stories all the time over COVID. So I sent an email out to, probably 50 or 60 of the advertisers, and said, it's, let's go, it's time to get back to life and and they just weren't ready to do it. And that was last July of 2021.
Mhm.
And, without the advertising, there just wasn't much I could do, so that's what
And
happened.
what about what happened with Nithya? Did that have anything to do with your decision? It seemed like you were kind of disillusioned in a way, or maybe
Um,
kind of feeling some
I,
judgment from people, or
no, no, not at all. The Nithya recall took a lot of time.
Mhm.
That was also a 7-day a week, 10 or 12 hours a day. I don't think I don't think that had anything to do. I
Okay.
think that if I had been paying more attention to the paper, maybe, but I became very involved in this recall effort.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay. Well, and then were you thinking about how to move on with your life? I mean, why did you move away, I guess? And what are you doing now?
do you want me to be really honest?
Yeah. Well, it's up to you.
I at this point in time, I think Los Angeles is ungovernable. I really do.
Mhm.
I think that there needs to be some very significant changes um, in leadership. And I feel I became, I just feel like it's ungovernable. I don't think anyone's doing anything about anything. I think people are throwing a lot of money at stuff. And is it about the homelessness problem? I don't know. I mean, I lived downtown for a handful of years. I saw the homeless situation firsthand every single day. I just needed a change.
Mhm.
I've never thought that I would always live in one place,
Mhm.
the rest of my life. I think where I am now is probably just a stopping off point as I try and figure out what I'm going to do next. I have made a decision to go back to school and get a degree in nursing.
I
Um,
heard that. Wow.
yeah,
That's fabulous. Is that an old kind of goal of yours in some ways
yeah,
in healthcare? Uh-huh.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I just like being a nurse.
Mhm.
I don't want to be a doctor. I just want to be a nurse.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
so I'm sort of in between things. I'm trying to figure out what to do. There's a lot of me that is a little disillusioned with journalism today.
Mm.
I think that things have gotten really, really bad. And I think that, this paper's right, this paper's left, this paper's this. I mean, that didn't used to be the case like it is today.
Mhm.
I think social media has really harmed journalism a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, I agree.
Um,
Mhm.
so I'm sort of in between. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just taking a little time out to just sort of sit.
Mhm. Yeah, okay. And your kids are not at home any longer. You're just responsible to yourself, right?
And my dog,
And your dog, right?
and my dog,
Yeah, me too.
and my
Well,
dog.
okay. Is there anything you'd like to say in the last minute or so? Do you want to say goodbye? Do you want to? Yeah. By the way, our our interviews are going into the USC Community History Archive. So it's kind of maybe a full circle in a way that you'll be in the Doheny Library Community History record. Okay.
I have been at Doheny Library many, many times pretending to study.
Mhm.
But I had the most fabulous education at USC, the most wonderful teachers,
Mhm.
and both my undergraduate and master's degree.
Mhm.
I wanted to say, when I decided to close the paper and make the announcement, I did it, and then I went on vacation because I didn't want to have to be here for the aftermath of it. I just wanted to go away because I was really, really sad about it.
Mhm.
But I received hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails of people. There were a couple of nasty things that people wanted to post on in response to the letter. And I just decided not to post any because the way I am, I would post all of them.
Mhm.
And I just didn't want to post some really nasty, a couple of nasty ones. But I heard from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people.
Yeah,
That
that's great.
that was lovely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. if there's anything else you want to say, we can plan another Zoom, really create an addendum. I would just share with you, you know, I was a chiropractor for 33 years and I loved it, but I also thought about being a nurse. I think if I had to start all over again, I might be a nurse. I think it's great work and I really wish you good luck. You're such a compassionate person. And nurses are doing a lot of the work these days, you know.
I don't know if we have any time left, but I have a very passion for disaster nursing. So, I mean, I visited Africa, I visited India, and I remember saying to friends, I'm going back there someday and I want to work and in, you know, helping people that are sick there. I mean, just wherever. I think disaster, not that those aren't disasters, but I think disaster nursing there's some commonalities with journalism. You know, you just sort of go to where something is happening and people need help.
Yeah.
So,
okay. I would just encourage you. There's an incredible documentary about Doctors Without Borders that was made. You can see it on Netflix, and you might be interested in maybe volunteering with them for a while. But they definitely engage in disaster healthcare. So, well, good luck. Please come back. You know,
Cheryl.
Let's have lunch. Okay.
Yeah, I miss Los Feliz and the alcove very, very much.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great.
Hey, I had to stop the recording. I've stopped the recording now, and it's gonna cut off in about a second. So, Allison, thank you very much. I'll send you the model release, and Cheryl, thanks for setting this up.
Yeah.
I'll let you guys know when it's posted.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Take care. Good luck. Okay.
Thank you so much.